Dear Hannah, I've been doing a lot of running recently. It's an excellent way to stay in shape, obviously. But that's not the main reason I run. Mostly I enjoy the fresh air and the freedom. You know, it gives me time to think. An hour or so with just my MP3 player and the sidewalk can really push away the office blues and relationship problems. It all seems to be in another world. It's not an avoidance tactic. I genuinely feel that this time to myself, just reflecting, helps me deal with my problems in a more balanced and effective way when the time comes. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Just be careful, I guess. I don't know how to say this. You and I had a big fight a couple of weeks ago, funny enough. But now I've forgotten what it was even about. Like I said, running takes your mind off things. So, I was stressed, needed to get out of the house, walk on the sidewalk for a while, distract myself. I took one of my favorite routes. In a city like this, you have to put up with the cityscapes, but there's a little park near my house, the kind I'm sure we've been to once or twice. I usually avoid the park after sunset, just common sense, but I needed some greenery to improve the mood. I decided I would do a lap around the outside of the park, close enough to be scenic and not too mindless. It was about 10:15, and while the streets weren't completely deserted, you could go quite a long time without seeing pedestrians or even cars on the roads. I was glad for that. Usually, my thoughts can only roam freely when I'm completely immersed in my own world, and being alone always helps. At least, I was glad of it at first. When I saw the dark outlines of the trees lining the park, I was vaguely aware of a strange creeping sense of unease. I couldn't drown out this irrational feeling, even with music, because it was at this point that my iPod began to malfunction. As I approached the park, the soothing sounds of Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, a classic motivational song albeit a bit overplayed, began to be replaced by a strange static, unlike anything I'd heard before. It was like a quiet but insistent cacophony of voices, talking or laughing, but blending together in a way that created a single, unintelligible sound. I made a mental note that I had one more problem to deal with tomorrow. As eerie as it was to hear that sound, the broken iPod made me even more eager to assuage my frustration with a good long run. Still, I was beginning to wish there were more people around, or that it was a little brighter outside. It would have been even better if the moon had not been hidden behind a dark, foreboding cloak of clouds. But I kept going, because what could be worse? Well, I'll tell you. As I began to circle the outside of the park's 3-foot metal fence, a large center field became visible through a gap in the tree crowns. During the daytime, the field was mostly occupied by people playing sports, soccer, frisbee, jogging like me, or whatever. At night, of course, there was no such thing, but the field wasn't empty either. A muffled shout drew my attention to a figure. No, 2 figures in the center of the field, one holding the other as if in an embrace. In fact, at first it seemed as if they were kissing, or perhaps that the larger one is stroking the neck of the smaller one. I thought this was a strange time and place for romance, but I kept running. It was none of my business. In the field, a large figure suddenly jerked its head sharply away from a kiss. I understood less and less. It let go of the second figure, which seemed to be falling to the ground, but I was impeded by the trees as I ran. At this point, I didn't feel the need to stop and look. The scene heightened my sense of unease, but I could still convince myself that it was just a couple of strange people loitering in the park. However, as the trees thinned, my illusions were quickly shattered. The second figure was indeed lying on the ground, and the other was leaning over it. That stopped me, though it was hard to see in the dark, and I still wasn't entirely sure I wasn't peeking at someone's weird escapade in the wild. But then the very moon I'd been longing for came out. Suddenly, the scene flooded with the bright white light of the nearly full moon took on an unsettling clarity. Although the distance made it difficult to make out details, I could see clearly enough that the victim's body and limbs, it was now obvious, were twitching violently as the huge figure bent over her, tearing, feeding. The moonlight must have illuminated me too, because something in the field suddenly stopped and looked right at me. I only stood there for a second, panic-stricken, but that second will haunt me for as long as I live. 2 eyes that I couldn't see from my seat, even if they were glowing, which seems impossible, sank into me. I could feel it looking at me. No, it wasn't just looking at me. I felt it smiling at me. with huge, jagged teeth haphazardly sunk into a mouth still blood red from a recent meal. It was smiling. I knew it. I didn't see it. I didn't imagine it. I just knew it. Then I ran. The road I was running on ran parallel to the park, and there were few turns on it, so I knew I had a long way to go before I could really bridge the distance between myself and the thing. I cast a couple of glances around the field as I raced down the middle of the deserted road, moving faster than I thought possible, even as an experienced runner. The victim lay sprawled carelessly on the grass. No sign of the critter. I looked back in the direction I was headed, and there it was, sitting on a streetlight right in my path. How did it get there so fast? I got my first good look at the creature. Blood was still dripping from the claws on the ends of its arms, disproportionately long, hanging down past the streetlight it was sitting on. The maw, still grinning, was exactly as I had seen it in my imagination, but worse, it covered most of the creature's face, more than seemed biologically possible. The eyes glowed with a faint red light. Overall, the creature reminded me of some kind of giant emaciated ape or deformed hairy human. I was trapped. There was no way to escape from this thing. I wasn't even sure I could begin to run. Up close, the creature's gaze was hypnotic. My limbs became heavy. My eyes began to burn. I just wanted it all to be over. Gradually, a loud rushing sound rang in my ears. Suddenly, the creature nimbly jumped from the light into a nearby tree and disappeared from sight. It was gone, but I felt dizzy, as if I had been marked in some incomprehensible way. My eyes were still burning. My surroundings were lighter, as if I were being illuminated by a pale light, and the rushing sound was getting louder. And then it hit me. The car, I mean. Don't worry, no serious injuries. Apparently the driver spotted me in time to hit the brakes, so I mostly got away with bruises. When I woke up in my hospital bed, the doctors told me I was lucky. But I must admit, I didn't feel so lucky when I saw the flash of red eyes and yellowed teeth in the window of my third-floor hospital. Anyway, I wrote you this letter to explain why I wasn't at the hospital when you came to see me, and why you haven't seen me at all since. And anyway, I've been running around a lot lately. Pray for me. Love, John.